Okay, so the area light, the rendering I was getting here, let's check it out. So this is something else. This is what I want to do today. I want to show you this for a second. So render settings, 25%. So what I have here is the quality was 1. I'm going to drop it down to 0. So since I'm going to go back to testing, I'm going to just drop the quality, and also global illumination. I'm not going to use a radius for now. I'm just going to go back to the normal settings that we started with. But I do have global illumination and final gather. So I'm going to go ahead and render that. So I'm having a spotlight, and then I have the area light outside of the door. The way the rendering worked on mine is I feel that I tweaked the numbers that way, so I didn't have any bleached areas, and that's what the purpose is like. And you guys need to kind of try to, tweak the numbers so you don't get like bleached areas. So I'm gonna review the numbers for this scene. I think you guys are using the exact same scale, unless you scale the scene to a bigger size, or if you have a different scaled scene, then numbers are going to change. So, but if you have this scale, then things are going to be fine. Now, one thing I notice is, we've been having issues with some grain, and if I go, and I'm going to keep this, if I go to this area light, I mean, it's best, usually, when we're using like some sort of light source, an exterior light source like this one, and we want some shadows, I'm not gonna use this one. I'm not gonna use this. I'm gonna separate the direct and the indirect illumination. That's what I'm gonna add to this scene right now. So this area light is responsible for contributing photon energy. So then that's why we click global illumination. We click it, and you need to understand the connection. We need to turn on the global illumination. Otherwise, all that work is, it doesn't go anywhere. Having photons in this over here, having photon energy, having this light emitting photons, it will only work if you go and click and turn on the global illumination from the render settings. Now I have 50,000 on the photon intensity, and then 500,000 photons are being illuminated. So what I'm going to do is just let's increase the intensity of the light and just go to a certain area. If you're guys getting any bleached areas, is because you probably have the intensity of the area light on too. So what you could do is get rid of all the intensity. This light is only responsible for throwing photons in the room, nothing else. But not only that, it doesn't need any decay, and it doesn't need any shadows. So you have to go to the shadows and turn off any shadows. So now, if I re-render this, I'm probably gonna save some time because it's gonna render faster. It doesn't need to calculate any ray trace shadows from that light. But what if I want shadows? I mean, that's the light source outside of the window. What if I want shadows? It's actually really easy. You can use another type of light and use it as a direct illumination. So now I'm getting a very balanced effect in terms of the interior space. And let's render that. And what I want to do is I can either make another area light outside that is only has a little bit of intensity and shadows, or I can make a spotlight, or I can make a direction light. Spotlight is mostly used for for very specific kind of like the way that we're using it here on the table. That's the best way to use it as an interior setup, or if you want street lights and all that. So now I need some other source. I'm going to create a direction light. So here's the direction light. So that's the direction light. If I press 7, so this is kind of the angle. So I'll this light doesn't matter what it is, where it is, but it's actually light plane. So now what's going to happen is, even if it's inside this box, it's still gonna shoot light and go through the window because we're inside this box. So this light is supposed to be like an infinite plane. So the box is going to block the light. So basically what we're going to get is only wherever we have it's going to get through this hole only from that window. So I'm going to go back to my bookmarks, and now this I can add anything I want. I can add like color and intensity. I don't care about photon emission. I already have photons. They're working perfectly, and I'm going to use ray trace shadows. So I'm going to create starting to create some mood. I'm going to add like maybe a color to that light, something like this, and the intensity I'm gonna go with 1.5, and I'm gonna try to render that. So now I have a bunch of lights in the scene. Notice that the interior is still intact. The direction light is operating from like an infinite space, so it will only go through where there is an opening. And you can see here that it's actually, the way that it's angled, it's going through the door, and it's probably going to be creating some shadow effect. So it's going through here, so it's like just a little bit. So I'm going to pause that. Here's what I could do just to like expedite this and not wait for all these like renderings to finish. And also something is causing the render to, oh yeah, the final gather. So I'm going to take off the final gather. I thought I took it off. The final gather, you don't need it. Basically, you just you need it, but you don't need it right in this moment, because we're going to only work with just setting up the light. So I'm going to hide everything else. So I'm going to take this area light and put it in a layer, and also grab that spotlight and put it in a layer. The layers are like just like switches. We're going to just turn off all the, so if the area light is not there, so the only thing we're going to have is the directional light, and I'm going to play with that angle a little bit, just like some sort of sunset. And I hope the rendering is going to go faster now, because now we don't have to deal with, yeah. So I only want to see where this light is hitting. So maybe I can rotate it a little bit towards the sofa, something like that. Once I get a correct, a desired sort of effect, something like that, then I'm gonna bring all the other lights in. And what I did before, I used like an area light, but this time I'm gonna just drop a point light and use a new one to generate interior photons in the room. So that's the the direction light. Also, this is not convincing, because the sky is like blue, and I don't have anything like an image. I would prefer to have some like a background, something like a background that reminds, that gives us like a city maybe image. So I'm gonna just use this, and just instead of like just a flat color, I'm gonna bring an image, a texture. So I'm gonna create a new material, like I'm gonna use a surface shader, because I don't want a surface shader is like a flat material that it will not be affected by the tone of the light. It's gonna be always bright, so that will give us like a nice background. It's good for background images, for instance, here. you can go. It's a very simple, straightforward material. So the surface shader, you can get the out color and replace it with a file texture. And here's the image. Now this image is I need to do a planar map for this to work. So I'm gonna go ahead, and the planar map should be on the Z. So UV, planar, and Z. Okay, so now I can do a little bit of positioning, and I need to go inside from the bookmark to see if that's working well. So this is I would prefer to make it a little bit smaller here, so I'm just gonna make this. So I'm just gonna move this. Something like that. So that would be a nice image. So the next thing I need to do is, okay, I'm gonna render that before I create another light. So I have only a directional light, so that's a directional light, and it's only direct illumination. And I'm gonna add a little bit more intensity to that light. So this seems a little bit low right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and select the directional light. Maybe make this a little bit brighter and make this 2. Okay, so I have that. Now I'm gonna make a point light. And move this. This is not gonna give us a good evaluation, like the viewport right now. So I'm gonna remove this sort of over here. Now the point light, I'm gonna use it only to emit photon energy. So no intensity, no shadows. So you have to find the shadows and eliminate them. Like ray traced or shadow map needs to be off. And we're going to emit some photons, and we're going to leave these numbers as they are. Go to the bookmark. And this time, I'm going to actually create, the photon color is usually white. I'm going to add a different type of, I'm going to, color that, so that will actually also tint the room. So these need to be a little bit more towards the red. And I'm going to increase the number of photons, like 100,000, and I'm going to do like 12,000 photon intensity. And increase, I can still increase this intensity, but actually one thing that will change is the final gather. So I'm going to bring in all the lights. I'm going to bring the spotlight back. Actually, let's see where the spotlight was. Here it is. So layer 3 was the spotlight. I'm gonna just make sure spot. The spotlight also, I'm gonna tint it yellow, and I'm also gonna make this light shade. I'm going to tint it yellow too. So let's see what we have here, and if we need to increase the intensity of the directional light. But all that is still it's quite dramatic. I mean, I could like take the colors a little bit. I can do it. I can do less orange, but I'm going to increase the intensity here, and also turn on the final gather. Things are going to change immediately when you turn on the final gather. So let's see that. This is what adds all that rendering time. That's where you start experiencing more. But that's the cleanup. The final gather comes in and it cleans the entire. It cleans all the blotchiness and all the. But at least what we eliminated is all the shadows that are coming from the photon lights, the indirect light, which is the point light in this case. I'm hiding the area light that was outside the door. I don't use it. I'm not using it anymore because what I want to do is create an interior ambient light. So that would be kind of a finalized render for this. So it's kind of giving me this, and I can still push the directional light more. I can just make it maybe double the size, double the intensity. And let me see if it's bleaching. When I see it, when it starts to like burn, then I'm gonna take it down. But so far, I think it's doing. So now I tinted the photon energy with the color. So I'm gonna go ahead and render this larger. So I'm just gonna go and do so you can either use an area light outside, or you can use like a point. I mean, the area light outside. The cool thing about it is that it actually has a like the light is more. It's coming from outside, so it's more realistic that way. In this case, I just wanted to add the light inside the room, just like even light. Whereas if you use the area light outside of the space, you can kind of simulate the decay of the light coming to, which that would be a realistic effect. So in that case, in this particular option, I'm just trying to stylize it more. And I don't care much about the realism. I'm just trying to like add a mood. Now, if you have like a bunch of windows in a skylight, you can go and add multiple area lights that have no shadows and have no intensity whatsoever, and they're only used for indirect illumination. Some of them can throw 10,000 photons, some of them can throw 5,000 photons, some of them can throw 200,000 photons. But you also have to like make sure that you don't overdo it with the photon number. You can't do millions of photons because the rendering, when it gets into a 2K or 4K image, you're gonna wait for like hours. So that's why you don't want to overdo it. You want to see where you get like a nice quality. How can you get away with specific accuracy, like 500 accuracy and 100 on the final gather, and then get that to work out. A lot of lighting artists will not create that mood I'm creating right now right in Maya. They will just do that in post production. So they would actually sometimes they wouldn't over tint the light. They would make more of a flat image, and then they would just add the filters or they were doing a composing software. But it's actually good for presentation to know these things because you want to just get a render and go in with 2 steps. You finalize it, retouch it a little bit. In Photoshop, just add maybe like an occlusion pass, and you're good to send it to a client. So it's kind of nice to at least to have that. I mean, for now, if you guys can do interior renderings or digital sets and you use like a bunch of area lights, and you can do a lot of presentation. So like quick presentation. Now you have the tools to do that. So you know exactly when to use final gather, or when to use only final gather, or when to use only or global illumination final gather. We've used final gather for exterior renderings, and that's what we're going to be doing. I don't think we're going to use global illumination on an exterior rendering. We're going to use a final gather, an IBL, a dome. We're going to do that next. But for interior settings like this, that you need light to just appear out of nowhere, the global illumination is great. So notice that the light now is more realistic because it's a little translucent, and I actually tinted the ambient on the light, the ambient setting. So that gave it a sort of self-illuminating quality, not the incandescence, the ambience. So I'll show you that before I finish the video. And that gave the light this kind of color. So then it looks like the light bulb inside is yellow, and it actually does that, creates that effect. We're going to keep adding into this scene later on, not maybe next week, but volumetric fog, so we can create like a sort of volume. And see how mental ray materials can act with global illumination, and how Maya materials act with global illumination. We can actually start tweaking materials so they can be they can express their own settings. They can respond on their own as well. So that's, yeah, I do have a little bit of a bleaching area. See, where the areas are really bleached out, before you commit to the final render, just do like a little region render and see if it's like washed out. If it's washed out, then change the setting. Oh, what? Huh? Well, the light now is actually hitting everything in in a certain angle, yeah. Like in this angle is not. It's actually not affecting the door as much. You know what? You're actually right. You're right. And I just noticed that. You know what happened? And I see it now as a larger image. That this doesn't make sense. Yeah, this doesn't make sense at all. This. Okay, so now that's a good thing that this happens, so we can actually troubleshoot that. This is a little strange too. I think when the light is hitting this wall, it's actually really bleaching it. So now we see a little bit more of the problems. So this doesn't make sense because when I created that background image in the back, it's blocking the light here. So let's see. See? I made see, it's blocking the light. So now that's responsible for this problem. And what I'm gonna do is, like, since this is only a background, I can select it, go to the render stats. That you find those in the outliner, and then you tell it, do not cast shadows, do not receive shadows. That's it. So the light will never affect it, will not see it. So I'm gonna go back into my camera view 1, and probably now see already we're looking at the light, and it's much more realistic the way it's. So now we might be having a problem, an issue with the door, and that's a good thing that you mentioned that. And also, that light is way too strong because I had a problem. If you see in the rendering, this was completely bleached out. Yeah. Maybe in the bump map sometimes it looks good, but when you start hitting the light on an angle, then you see the problem with the bump. So maybe the bump needs to be less. So I'm not gonna change the bump right now. I'm just gonna go and turn that intensity down and do a couple of tests in this scale. I'm going to keep this image. First, I'm going to do a test on the door.
Context. When you use Final Gather, don't you want to use color management on certain things?
Yeah, the thing is, I'm not using color management.
Yeah.
I'll explain. What?
I noticed that
Yeah.
like it's on purpose.
It's because 2015 and 2016 are different, and I'm like doing the videos. Yeah, I'm doing the videos from 2016. So what I'm gonna do is, okay, so let me just finish this and I'll explain. I'm getting, so this is not a very good sign. This is way too complicated. I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and reduce that bump map. So that is the wall, and I have to go all the way down to the bump and reduce that to 0.2. Do one more render. Yeah, the reason I'm not using color management is because now they changed the color management settings in 2016 and would be confusing. And I don't want to go back to 2015 since now they have an automatic button about it. I'm going to explain it once, and once we're done with this, and we make all the no. This is better. This is a bit better. And then I'm going to explain more. Now the rest is like problems with, you know, all this. Yeah, not the shadow. This is fine. It's more like the blotchiness around, which is, remember we introduced a little bit of that radius, and the numbers we added were like I think what 4 or 5, like 4 units, and then maybe 0.3 as a merge distance, and I think we might get away with some of those cloudiness that is happening. If not, yeah, we're getting it's blending a little bit better. So those are, I mean, numbers that we can use to blend it. Okay, so now I think that, see, the door now is better. So it's like it's actually getting hit by the light. That's normal. But it doesn't get bleached out because of the material too. I mean, the material is like more like diffused. You know, so if that door was made out of metal, it would be yeah, it would be immediately emitting. So now this is done. I'm gonna turn off the video and then do another render. So it's not.